Hi, folks. This is Joe Firestone for Empowering Democracy. I hope you're all doing well tonight. Uh, there's been a new plan. And by the way, I'm expecting uh, most probably Dee Pierce and Gregory Mallard to be joining me very soon. Uh, but to get back to what I was saying, there's a new plan that's been introduced. Hi there, Lana. Into the Congress into the Senate, actually, by two senators, Bill Cassidy, Louisiana, and Angus King, okay, of Maine. Angus King, of course, is an independent who caucuses with the Democrats, uh, who's pretty centrist, not quite as centrist as Joe Manchin, not quite as centrist as Kyrsten Sinema, but he was one of the 8 senators who was not for raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, just to give you a little bit, gave an orientation. But they've introduced a plan for saving Social Security. Hang on a second. I think I need to do one thing here. Just wanted to share my stream here to the public. Okay, what that plan is about, and an article on the plan was published recently in the Prospect by Ryan Cooper. To give you a little background, okay, Ryan Cooper is pretty lefty, has written a good deal about the MMT approach, and I could have sworn he was an MMTer, but maybe not. Anyway, the article about this plan is in the American Prospect, and it's called "The Smart Bipartisan Plan to Shore Up Social Security." That's the title of the article. The two senators, of course, are labeling it as a smart bipartisan plan also. After all, they probably figure, self-congratulation never hurt. And there's a little caption to this picture of the Social Security Administration. Hang on a second. I need to let in Gregory.
Yep.
Okay, Gregory Mallard of Evolution on Facebook, okay, and YouTube, and also a great Georgian activist and one of our favorite people at this point. And so Greg,
Howdy ho, folks.
okay, is joining us.
Howdy, Lana, Steve, K, and everyone else.
Okay, so the caption on this photo of the Social Security Administration, or the front of the Social Security Administration, reads, "The payroll tax cap was supposed to allow for 90% of payroll income to be taxed by Social Security. But in 2021, that figure plummeted to 81.4%. In other words, the Social Security payroll taxes are dropping as a percent of what they're supposed to be. And since the gospel in Washington is still the taxes pay for spending, this is considered a big problem. And of course, they're going to talk about the trust fund here. Ryan Cooper is. Social Security has a problem. It's estimated in roughly 2035 or so, its trust fund will run out of money and won't be able to fund all scheduled benefits. There are a lot of problems with that sentence. The trust fund has no money in it now. It's an accounting record of what the Treasury owes to Social Security. But Social Security doesn't have any money. It doesn't have a bank account. It's not like the Treasury Department that has a bank account at the New York Fed out of which it spends. You don't get your Social Security checks from the Social Security Administration. You get your Social Security checks from the Treasury Department. They come out of Treasury. There's no money in Social Security. There's just an accounting record. There is no trust fund. Forget that. So, and won't be able to fund all scheduled benefits. Well, of course, if the trust fund has no money in it, of course it can't fund all scheduled benefits. So what does fund all scheduled benefits? What funds it is the Social Security Act and congressional appropriations that occur each year, which allow the Treasury Department to spend for Social Security benefits. That's where the funding comes from. It comes from the Treasury General Account, ultimately, at the New York Fed. There are two basic operations for resolving the situation. Either cut benefits, which will happen automatically if nothing is done, or find new sources, of money.
And what Warren Mosler, he also said there is no operational constraint on the government's ability to meet Social Security payments in a timely manner. It doesn't matter what the numbers are in the Social Security Trust Fund account, because the trust fund is nothing more than record keeping, as are all accounts at the Fed. And that's from Warren Mosler himself.
Right. And of course, one of the people I learned that from was Warren Mosler.
Mm-hmm.
Also learned a lot about the Social Security Trust Fund from Stephanie Kelton. And
I've learned a lot from Mike Norman as well.
Okay. I've written about the Social Security Trust Fund, on many occasions. And in part, what you're hearing is based on those things. Mm-hmm. Going on, for decades, conservatives and a galaxy of pro-austerity groups have been pushing the former option. Well, one of the reasons why they're pushing the former option is that they frame the problem of funding Social Security with this statement made by Ryan Cooper here: either cut benefits, which will happen automatically if nothing is done, or find new sources of money. One thing we learn, from MMT is that when it comes to funding programs, there aren't any new sources of money. The sources of money are always the same. They are congressional appropriations. And if there's not enough money in the Treasury account to spend appropriations, then that money has to be gotten from the Federal Reserve, which creates new money for spending all the time. Everything spent by the federal government out of that Treasury account is new money being created. It isn't old money. It isn't tax money. It's new money. Everybody needs to get that straight, including Ryan Cooper. He's written enough about things like that. He ought to know it by now, and he needs to watch his framing. Also, why did I want to take this up tonight? Because Crystal and Sager had another program on it, lauding the new idea from Angus King and Bill Cassidy. And of course, they framed it in the same way. Either you raise Social Security taxes or you cut benefits. Going on. For decades, conservatives in a galaxy of pro-austerity groups have been pushing the former option, which has taken form most recently with the Trust Act, championed primarily by Senator Mitt Romney, a Republican of Utah, but given new life by Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat in name only of West Virginia. I added that little commentary, of course, at Davos, where else, last week. The Trust Act would create bipartisan committees to draw up reforms. Read cuts. Well, that's right. That's certainly right. On the latter option, several politicians on the left have proposed finding new tax revenue by, for example, removing the payroll tax cap. By the way, everybody should know, including Ryan Cooper and Crystal Sager, that tax revenue does not fund Social Security. Tax revenue, when it's settled, tax revenue, when it's deposited by the Treasury into its Fed account, is destroyed in the process of settlement and cannot therefore fund Social Security or anything else, nor does it fund Social Security, which is why it doesn't go into into a Social Security bank account. Anyway, on the left have proposed finding new tax revenue by, for example, removing the payroll tax cap, which currently exempts income over $160,000 from the tax. As the Economic Policy Institute has pointed out, the cap was supposed to allow for 90% of payroll income to be taxed by Social Security, but thanks to inequality and soaring incomes at the top, in 2021, that figure plummeted to 81.4%. Scrapping the cap would mean that Jamie Dimon, who makes $34.5 million per year, and you meaning me and Greg and everybody, would pay the same amount of payroll income as a percentage of salary into the system. Instead, of course, what Jamie Dimon pays into the system is the tax on the first $160,000, and the money he gets between $160,000 and $34.5 million isn't taxed at all. He doesn't have to pay that into Social Security. But beyond taxes and cuts, there's a very interesting new proposal from Senators Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, and Angus King, Independent of Maine, to create an investment fund whose profits could fund Social Security benefits. It's a splendid and long overdue idea. Let me first deal with the Trust Act. This is basically a redux of the Bowles-Simpson Commission from 2010, which President Obama set up to find ways to cut the deficit. As the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget explains, it would set up rescue committees for lawmakers to seek bipartisan agreement on changes to extend the solvency of and to otherwise improve trust fund programs. that is also framed in an unfortunate way because there can't be solvency to a trust fund that doesn't have any funds in it. In other words, there's no funds in it now. It assures us that the Trust Act would not make any direct changes to Social Security or Medicare, though, quote, cost reductions would be on the table. So, in other words, the committees set up by the trust fund might reduce Social Security payments or rates of payments or cost of living formulas. So, cost reductions would be on the table, but it would not make any direct changes to Social Security or Medicare. What are cost reductions if not direct changes? Anyone familiar with Washington knows what is going on here. The CRFB, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which is headed by the Petersonian, specifically Maya McGinnis, the Dragon Lady herself, is a fanatically pro-austerity group that has been gunning for the American safety net for decades. The point of committees like this is to launder the blame for hugely unpopular cuts. In a 2019 Pew poll, 74% of Americans said there should be no reduction in Social Security benefits between both parties. For centrist elites forcing the American people to drink their tough medicine, also known, by the way, as eating their peas, by slashing welfare programs, is the heart and soul of responsible policymaking. Of course, we beg to differ. The heart and soul of responsible policymaking is making Social Security policy for the public purpose. And according to polls and various other things, the public purpose is obviously to expand Social Security, not to cut it or make the American people eat tough medicine or whatever the hell that is. As Alan Simpson, the aforementioned commission, that is the Cat Food Commission of 2010, once said, Social Security is a, quote, milk cow with 310 million tits, unquote. Not coincidentally, benefit cuts protect the rich from taxation. Incidentally, it's important to understand that the deep problem with Social Security is about demographics, not but not accounting. Is he saying it's about demographics and not money? Is that what he's saying? I think there are many people who think it's about their money. But yes, demographics is a factor, no doubt. People often think of the program as a savings account and that the money is going to run out because of irresponsible politicians raiding the trust fund. Then he says here, in contradiction to what he earlier said, but it's really a welfare program with almost all of the payroll tax collected immediately kicked out again to beneficiaries. Of course, it's not immediately kicked out again. There is an equivalent amount of money kicked out again through the mechanisms of the Federal Reserve. But it's not the same money. It's not the tax revenue. Fundamentally, any form of retirement, private investments included, depends on the existence of a working class to provide goods and services for sale. It depends on the existence of all who are instrumental in creating a productive economy. Now, I agree, the working class is given much too little credit for its contributions to the goods and services for sale. The working class is absolutely necessary and is shortchanged all the time. I'm sure that Ryan Cooper and I completely agree on that. When the population ages, thanks to a declining birth rate and reduced immigration, that means fewer workers available to provide for seniors. That plus payroll income at the top, shielded from taxation thanks to the cap, reduces the amount available to fund social insurance. So, the fact that all of the payroll income is not being taxed, and by the way, I wonder why all of the income, including payroll income, is not being taxed. Why not? Uh, Reduces the amount available to fund social insurance. So going further, so what about the investment idea? Joseph Zabalas Roig reports in Semaphore that Cassidy and King are proposing the federal government create a new fund separate from the Social Security Trust Fund in which borrowed money would be invested in stocks, which typically grant a much higher rate of return than treasury bonds. In other words, they would harness a small amount of American capital income returns from stock, debt, real estate, and so on, which reliably constitutes about 30% of national income. So, in other words, 30% of national income would be taxed. Okay, and the revenue from that uh, would be invested in this national wealth fund that they are proposing. Okay, not as an alternative to the Social Security Trust Fund. The Social Security Trust Fund would remain, but the predicted shortfall of roughly 25% of Social Security benefits for the rest of the 21st century would be paid for by having a real fund. Okay, a real fund. Somewhere, I suppose, there would actually be a bank account for this fund. Going on. This is not just a fair source of funding. The richest top 1% of Americans own over a third of American wealth. It's also just plain common sense, as policy analyst Matt Bruenig points out in a People's Policy Project paper advocating a broader social wealth fund. Quote, between 1990 and 2017, the average interest rate for a one-year Treasury bond purchase on the first day of the year was 3.17%. During the same time, the average total return of the S&P 500 was 11%. Given how often politicians and commentators advocate for running the government like a business, it is remarkable how few have noticed this free 8.13% return sitting on the table. It's not so remarkable because that 11.3% is for giving to people to Social Security, right? So why would the business people, why would they exert themselves to notice this free 8.13% return sitting on the table? Because most of it would not be going to them, right? So they don't have an interest in that. Any Wall Street trader would kill for that kind of opportunity. And if we had done so, Social Security would be in far better shape financially than it currently has. Conservatives will likely object that government would surely bungle its investment, but there are working examples of social wealth funds all over the world, including in America. Norway has accumulated an eye-popping 1.3 trillion in its main social wealth fund. And by the way, if you don't think that's a lot, you have to notice that Norway has a population of something like 6 or 7 million people. They have a 1.3 trillion social wealth fund, whereas our Social Security fund is what? Something like, okay, it's in the 3 trillion range. And we have a population of 330 million here. So that figure is eye-popping for a population of 6 million. Going on, while the Alaska Permanent Fund has accumulated 75 billion, which is used to pay an annual dividend to uh, uh, um, um, to all of the Alaskans. I should point out here that dividend comes to like 500 a year or 600 a year. And both have extremely good performance with rock bottom administration costs. Heck, the government could just hire the Alaskan fund managers to run the Social Security fund, or it could follow the example of passive index funds, which simply invest in a representative sample of the market. At the Financial Times, Robin Wigglesworth cites research estimating that as of 2020, at least 38% of the U.S. stock market was owned by such funds, along with firms and individuals that follow similar inert strategies, and the true figure is almost certainly much more than that. Alas, the Trust Fund Act probably has a better political chance of success than Cassidy and King's more fair and technically competent approach. Official Washington prefers elite politicians making hard choices to slash benefits for seniors on fixed incomes. In other words, not for them, unless they're over 65, of course, but it's a hard choice to slash benefits for somebody else, like fun, right? But a social wealth fund is an idea worth underlining. I think it's worth crossing it out, but I'll say why in a few minutes. One of the most unfair aspects of capitalism is how it enables rich people, especially ultra wealthy oligarchs who get the vast majority of the income from investments, to collect money while sitting around their palatial estates eating peeled grapes. If everyone from pension funds to BlackRock is raking in enormous returns doing literally nothing, there's every reason for the government to get a piece of the action on behalf of American seniors and disabled folks. I want you to notice that the framing of this whole thing, including the social wealth fund idea, assumes that taxes are funding government spending, that taxes are funding our Social Security payouts. That's false. And that's why this solution is a contrived solution based on neoliberal assumptions. And it's overly complex. And we don't need this solution because there are many simpler solutions. Here are three. The first one is a solution that I proposed back in 2016. On my blog, I will share this for you. Should have shared the first article for that matter, but I forgot. Anyway, here is the screen, shared screen, and here is my first plan. Yes, we can pay for increasing Social Security benefits. This was published on February 23rd, 2016, nearly 7 years ago. Or I might add, I start off with as a continuation of the headline, for any other obligation that the federal government cares to honor. Some time ago in the pages of USA Today, Duncan Black, better known to some, as Atrios, voiced the immediate need for increased Social Security benefits of 20% or more, even if it meant raising taxes on high incomes or removing the payroll tax cap on salaries. Of course, Bernie Sanders is also advocating for higher Social Security benefits to be paid for, in part by raising the tax cap. Black is right, and so are Bernie, Warren, and others. about the need for increased benefits, but legislating that increase doesn't require increasing taxes. In fact, Congress should both increase benefits and remove the payroll tax entirely. That's me. That's my proposal. And how is that possible without increasing, quote, the national debt, unquote? The answer to that one is easy. Don't tax or borrow to pay for it. Just mint a single 1 ounce platinum coin at the beginning of each fiscal year with a face value large enough to cover the anticipated cost of Social Security payments.
Hashtag mint the damn coin.
Mint the fucking coin.
Hell yeah.
That way, we'll both take care of retirement needs and also provide a huge shot in the arm for employment, since the increase in Social Security benefit payments and the ending of the payroll tax won't be offset by tax increases elsewhere that will depress aggregate demand. How many times have you heard that government can only spend money after it raises revenue by either taxing or borrowing? Nearly every time someone talks or writes about the U.S.'s public deficit slash debt problem. I should have put problem there in quotes. Why is it that nobody asks why, since Congress has unlimited constitutional authority to create coins and currency, it just doesn't create money when a deficit spends? The short answer is that Congress in 1913 constrained both itself and the executive branch from creating currency or bank reserves, delegating its power to do that to the Federal Reserve System. But coins, it turns out, are different. They're the province of the executive branch and the Treasury, and Congress provided the authority and legislation passed in 1996. Though recently I've been reading from some pretty good sources that it was passed in 1997. I have to resolve that conflict because I've always heard 1996 before. Anyway, for the U.S. Mint to create 1 ounce platinum bullion or proof platinum coins with face values to be specified at the discretion of the Secretary of the Treasury. Hello, Janet Yellen. Having no relationship to the market value of the platinum used in the coins. These coins are legal tender. That is, they are tax credits, which the Treasury is obligated to accept in payment of taxes if they ever fell into private hands. And when the Mint deposits them in its public enterprise fund account at the New York Fed, the Fed must credit it with the face value of these coins because the asset value of the coin is legally its face value. The difference between the Mint's costs in producing the coins and the reserves provided by the Fed in return for a deposit of such coins is the U.S. Mint's, quote, coin seigniorage or profit from the transaction. The U.S. Code also provides for the Treasury to periodically, quote, sweep, unquote, the Mint's account at the Fed for profits. These then go into the Treasury General Account, TGA, also to New York Fed, the primary spending account of the Treasury, narrowing or eliminating the revenue gap between spending and tax revenues. Now, I'm not saying here that tax revenues fund anything, but the point being, there is an equivalent amount of new money created by the Federal Reserve once tax revenues are deposited in the Treasury General Account. In other words, money is destroyed and simultaneously money is created by the Fed in the settlement process. Okay, so there is a revenue gap between spending and tax revenues, and that revenue gap can be filled by platinum coin seigniorage. So platinum coins with multi-trillion face values can produce profits, closing the revenue gap while still retaining the deficit between tax revenues and spending that can add to aggregate demand in the private sector and produce full employment. Lots of other good things also. Platinum coin seigniorage, PCS, is also a way for the executive to end debt ceiling crises, since coin seigniorage revenues can be used to repay debt instruments when they fall due without needing to issue any more debts. If all debt instruments are repaid by using seigniorage, eventually the U.S. would have no debt subject to the limit or presence in the bond market and would pay no interest to bondholders. No one would worry about the public debt or use its size to justify blocking legislation. But won't creating all these reserves in the TGA by using PCS be inflationary? No, it won't, because causal channels for creating the inflation won't be there. But that's a story for another day, or you can read it now at the link. I think that link is probably, it's either a link to my book or to a piece by Scott Fullwiler. I'm not sure which it is at this point. That's a story for another day. You can read it now at the link, along with consideration of possible legal, institutional, economic, and political objections. PCS based elimination of debt can both pay for Social Security benefit increases and also and the whole austerity mindset that provides our current budgetary process with its constraining conservative cast focused on narrow monetary cost considerations. Instead, we can use a broader reality based framework that weighs the real costs and benefits of proposed fiscal activities of the federal government. If PCS were used to supplement taxing and federal borrowing was ended, then Congress and the executive could evaluate the substance of legislative proposals based on their likely direct impacts and side effects on the lives of Americans rather than their impact on federal deficits and surpluses. Then the issues would be about what people need and what improvements we can make by working together through our federal government. We could begin talking about real fiscal responsibility rather than the false notion of it we see today, based on the ideals of a balanced budget or at least a decreasing debt to GDP ratio that has no relation to fiscal sustainability or responsible in nations like the United States with its non convertible fiat currency, floating exchange rates, and no debts in currencies they do not issue. Real fiscal responsibility would be the fulcrum of a new politics, not debt, deficits, and debt to GDP ratios. If you'd like to see this paradigm shift in fiscal politics happen, then please learn about this effort and help to make it a reality. Lastly, apart from his calls for enhanced Social Security benefits, Bernie Sanders' agenda for America has met with frequent calls to answer to the question, quote, how are you going to pay for it? Unquote. Bernie answers this by arguing that the tax law changes he advocates will produce enough revenue to pay for his program. Others answer that there won't be enough money in the increased taxes because Bernie's assumptions about economic growth are too optimistic given recent economic history and Republican opposition. The back and forth that ensues provides a perfect opportunity, regardless of the strength of the arguments, for Hillary Clinton backers to say that Bernie is misleading the public about what he can pay for and hence accomplish. Others then show the assumptions about growth Bernie makes aren't unrealistic, and then we're off to the races with fear, uncertainty, and doubt, otherwise known as FUD, alienating people from supporting Bernie, regardless of the strength of the arguments on all sides. Now, this post is telling you how to pay for enhanced Social Security benefits and every other new spending proposal to accomplish public purpose as well. When either a Republican opponent or a Hillary Clinton supporter tries to create a downer by asking you in a debate, how are you going to pay for them, quote unquote, because whether Bernie's growth projections work or not, and whether his tax proposals raise enough funds to pay for everything or not, he will still have a way to pay for everything as long as Congress will appropriate the spending and he mints a coin to cover it. Indeed, we can even use the Platinum Coin Senior Authority to increase the likelihood that Congress will appropriate the things he wants to pass. If he directs the Treasury Secretary to direct the Mint to create a 100T face value 1 ounce platinum coin and deposit it in the Public Enterprise Fund account, then $100 trillion will end up in the TGA. And if that happens, how do you suppose the Republican Congress, the dinos, and assorted third way Democrats will rationalize not legislating the spending programs he thinks are necessary for the well being of Americans? Uh, okay, I'm not going to read the rest of this. You get the point and you get the plan. It's to fund Social Security by Congress continuing to appropriate the funds for the Social Security program and the Treasury to create those funds by using the platinum coins it has the authority to create. So that's one plan uh, in contradiction to the social wealth plan. That plan is simpler than the social wealth plan because all it does is add new monies coming from the platinum coin to the Social Security Trust Fund, the so-called trust fund. That's the only change, okay, that it would make. It would, of course, fully fund Social Security and any expansions of Social Security. Oh, wait, in my summary statement here, okay, I am actually mistaken. This plan would also remove Social Security payroll taxes. So you would no longer have the situation that the 99% are paying for their Social Security benefits in some sense, okay, of paying for because they're getting taxed for it, while the 1% is exempt from most of the Social Security payroll taxes. In my plan, the 1% would remain exempt from Social Security taxes. But the rest of us would also be exempt from Social Security taxes because there wouldn't be any more Social Security taxes. There would only be revenues from the platinum coin for uh, um, funding whatever Social Security benefits the Congress chooses to make. So I wanted to
Yeah,
emphasize.
and I've often heard the argument that Social Security can go broke, it can go insolvent, and then I started hearing you and many others say it cannot, and then that's when I started realizing that the Social Security Trust Fund was non-existent and Social Security could never go broke at all.
Right. Okay. I have also two other plans for saving Social Security, which are also very simple. Uh, and of course, they also involve the sovereign monetary power of the federal government. Okay, specifically, the other plan is that the Congress appropriates whatever benefits, okay, it wants to appropriate each year for Social Security, and that when the appropriations take place, they mandate the Federal Reserve to create the estimated but number of dollars that will be necessary for the Treasury to have to spend the Social Security benefits into the accounts. Now, that doesn't use a platinum coin. It's real simple. It just means putting some boilerplate into the Social Security appropriation. Two sentences worth, okay, of boilerplate. In fact, only one sentence if this is just about funding Social Security itself. It just has the Congress require, okay, mandate the Federal Reserve to create that extra money, whether it's $650 billion or $750 billion. I'm not sure what it costs now per year. Okay, or 1 trillion Social Security dollars. All the Congress has to do is when it appropriates it, it puts an order in the appropriation for the Federal Reserve to create those dollars in the Treasury general account up front at the start of each year. How's that for a simple plan? Add a sentence to the appropriations bill. That's all it would take. There's nothing more simple than that. Okay. And then there is also a third plan. And that third plan is pretty simple as well, but it doesn't only apply to Social Security. Okay, it applies to all of the federal programs. And what it provides for is for the Congress, when it makes an appropriation of any kind, to mandate the Federal Reserve to produce the reserve balances in the Treasury spending account, okay, at the New York Fed, to spend the appropriation and to do that up front. Okay, now, of course, it would also have to put in a second sentence saying that the Federal Reserve no longer has to credit the Treasury spending account with an equivalent amount of money from tax revenue. Okay, because it has advanced the necessary money for spending by ordering the Federal Reserve to create that money in the Treasury spending account. So those are then 3 different plans for funding Social Security. I submit that while my plans are not necessarily bipartisan, what I could call them is the nonpartisan plans for funding Social Security. Okay, because right now, neither the Democratic Party nor the Republican Party supports such plans, even though they are the most effective plans and they are the simplest plans that are on the table right at the moment.
Your plan sounds a hell of a lot better to me.
It's a lot simpler. And by the way, it could be guaranteed each year
By minting the coin.
It doesn't have to be done by minting the coin, though minting the coin would certainly work. But the way it could work is the way Medicare Part D works right now. When the Bush administration passed Medicare Part D, okay, it has a provision, okay, in the law which provides for Congress to act 1 year in advance so that the spending for Medicare Part D is approved in advance, okay, 1 year in advance. Okay, that means from the accounting point of view, under current law, that funding is guaranteed, okay, in perpetuity. So no one ever says that the trust fund, okay, the Medicare trust fund, is going to run out of the Part D money. Because according to the accounting and public law, that will never happen. It will be perpetually there. So we could put in a similar provision for Social Security as well. And of course, here's a fourth plan, which Gregory just touched on, if the $100 trillion coin, okay, is minted by Joe Biden, okay, and the Congress makes its appropriation of Social Security benefits each year, it could be mandated that the payments for Social Security come out uh, of that kind of quote trust fund, even though we recognize that these so-called trust funds the federal government has are
Excuse
not
me just
bank
one moment, but
accounts.
I'm going to go for tonight and get ready for my show. And I'll see
Okay,
y'all here
thanks.
soon.
Okay, I hope you like this one.
Oh, I love it.
Good.
Oh, like is a severe understatement. I love it.
Okay, good.
I'll see y'all in a few minutes over on my show.
Okay,
But
take
have a good
care.
night, everyone.
Okay,
And
I'll
take
see
your time, Joe.
you then as well. Okay, folks. So Greg has gone now, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen since I basically finished everything I wanted to say. Kay says Larson's Social Security 2100 Act. Uh, yeah, I haven't read his act, but I do think, okay, I do think that uh, his act is likely to be a good one from the standpoint of the people, but it won't use notions, okay, of minting the coin, okay, uh, okay, or of overt congressional financing, which I just used, okay, in this particular discussion. So I'm sure that his has a provision for increasing taxes to pay for Social Security. Okay, so here are some comments. I'll go through those briefly. Lana said this from Mike Norman, but several years ago. Did you mean to leave a link there, Lana? Oh yeah, he said the SS Trust Fund is just a spreadsheet. Exactly, it is just a spreadsheet. Uh, and the Treasury Department pays out according to what is in that particular spreadsheet. But of course, it's not a bank account. There's no money in that trust fund. If you have a trust fund that's set up for you by someone else, that's got money in it. That's got money in it. Steve Homer says, damn, it's tax time again already. Jeff Denton says, hi, Kay. Kay says, yes, expand SS. Blue Cross movement says that mineral rights and data rights create two additional avenues of income for every citizen. I guess I got to get this across. Federal government is a monetary sovereign. It creates its own money. Congress creates it based on Article 1, Section 8. There isn't any reason to look for new avenues of income, or maybe stated more appropriately, the new avenues of income for people, for the people of the United States, come from congressional appropriations. Those are the new avenues of income. All you have to do is get your Congress people to appropriate that income. You don't have to get it from mineral rights or from data rights or from sovereign wealth funds. A monetary sovereign does not need a sovereign wealth fund. Steve Wolfram says, MTFC. Robert Copeland said, I am afraid if they mint the coin, they would spend more on the military. They might spend more on the military, but that's a separate political issue. If you don't want them to spend more for the military, then you've got to vote against the people who spend more for the military. That's the proper way to stop them, not to impose an artificial constraint on the spending power of the federal government, like debt ceilings or all these other stupid things. It's democracy that should decide to spend less on the military and spend more on other things. It's not these false fiscal considerations. Doc, do you and Barney get enough from SS to get by monthly? No, we do not get enough funds, okay, from SS. We are lucky that we have some other sources of funding. Those are not sources that, okay, in other words, they are sources, okay, of additional money. Without them, we would not be able to get by. Social Security is our major source of income, of course, but we do get substantial funds from other sources. Now, okay, I had hoped that my activities on these streams and my ideas would be appreciated enough to raise some money from these streams, of course, in the same way that other streamers do. But sadly, that has not been the case. So, there's Sandy. Hi, Sandy. And Kay says Larson, Social Security 2100 Act. And Kay says scrap the cap. Sandy says, hi, Sandy. And Blue Cross Movement says, hi. Kay says, hi, Blue Cross. Sandy, Joe, do you do a show on crypto? They are burning up huge amounts of energy on their crypto mining. Okay, I may do that. I don't think it'll be next time. Well, certainly next time. Okay, there's going to be more of Dump the Corruption. But in future weeks, at some point, I'll do a show, okay, on crypto. Okay. Crypto, though, is also something that it's very, very risky because it's based only on the willingness of people to trade crypto. Okay, the whole value of cryptocurrency is based on the volume of trading. It's very volatile. Yes, it's an opportunity for some people to become extremely well off, as they have. It is also an opportunity for a lot of people to lose a lot of money, which they also have. Okay, it's a way for people to gamble, is what it is. I know there's some skill involved, so the more skilled people can prosper based on the mistakes that are made by the less skilled people. I agree that's that there, but it's basically a conflictful environment. Okay? It's not a collaborative environment. And I have never even dabbled in it. Kay says, cash in my can works. Thank you, Kay. So, I'm going to end the broadcast on that note. And I'm going to suggest that everybody go over to Greg's place. And I'm going to give you Greg's I'm not finding. Okay, if you know Greg's YouTube channel, please go over there. Okay, if you have it bookmarked or saved. Right now, I'm looking for the link that he left earlier, but I can't find it for some reason. Now, I don't see the YouTube channel from Greg, so let me see. Okay, I'll get it in just a minute. Yeah, just a minute. Okay, guys, I don't have it, but I'm going to go over there in a minute. Okay, and then I'll get it. God, why am I having such trouble with this? No, that's not it. Okay, I just got it. Good night, everyone. I'm ending now.